Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome. What we're going to be talking about today is documentary filmmaking. It is a particular kind of documentary filmmaking, though. I know I was talking to one of your teachers who said he teaches investigative journalism. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about something that we call advocacy filmmaking. And I hope what you find exciting about this is the fact that we'll show some clips from movies, and they are done by our students at Villanova University. My name is John O'Leary. I teach in the communication department at Villanova. And this is Steve McWilliams, who also teaches in communication and theater at Villanova, and is also the advisor to students with disabilities at Villanova. Steve came to me in 2007 and said, you know what would be great? We have so many students who are interested in social justice issues. And they wouldn't it be great if they had an outlet to create films about those issues? So I turned him down. I said, no, the university will never go for it. It would take too much time and resource to do it. So what we did, eventually we got Villanova to say, okay, to a 6-credit instead of a 3-credit course, 10 to 15 students every semester come together and they make a movie in 15 weeks. Now, these movies have done really, really well. They have won a number of national and international film festivals. These movies have been featured in the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Good Morning America, NBC 10, ESPN, especially this film up here. Has anybody heard of this film coming off the DL? Heard it or seen it? Or it was featured on ESPN and on ESPNU, right? And was on ESPN's webpage, Game Day. What we decided we wanted to do, and again, we hope this is sort of fitting for you because you're going to be watching movies that got a lot of acclaim, that did a lot of good for organizations that were made for virtually no money. And were made in a very short period of time, 15 weeks, by people not that much older than you are. And many of them had never touched a camera. Most of them, I would say, had never touched a camera. They just had passion. So what we do with this, the course we teach is called Social Justice Documentary, and what it tries to do is to shine a light on individuals or organizations that are making a positive social change. So we, as the filmmakers, as the storytellers, we are advocates for these people. We want to get their story out. So I'll let Steve talk a little bit about how we came up with this and what we try to do.
Well, how many people here have made a movie, want to make a movie, or thinking about making a movie, or are interested in making a movie? Because we want you to have a couple takeaways. We don't want you to just come listen to us talk about our movies. I'd rather give you hopefully some ideas on where to go from here and encourage you to make films. Like John said, these films were made by students with little to no experience, but all interested in, passionate about social justice issues and making a difference. So it's not filmmaking to make movies that are like Fast and Furious or action films or narrative films that, yes, are very exciting, and that's a noble thing to do. But these are films that really are helping, oftentimes, very low-funded nonprofits. Nonprofit world, a lot of organizations are doing great work, but they don't have any money and they have to go out and raise money. So one of the things our films do are help nonprofits show people what they're doing with their work. And they use them for publicity, they use them for grant writing, and they raise money. So that's the side purpose of the film. Let's talk about a film, and let's talk about this particular film. I'll give you a little history of this film. And one of the things I would say to you, if you're going to make a film, there are millions and millions of people making films. If you look on YouTube every month, I think there's a couple billion films on YouTube now, and everybody's making. Now a lot of the stuff is here. You take a cell phone and you jump off a building and you tape it. You break your leg or something, and people laugh. Everything people do on YouTube sometimes it's like people just videotaping everything because they have a cell phone. That doesn't make a movie because you have a cell phone with a video feature on it. And how do you make a movie that means something? That's really what I think our theme of our Our talk is today, how do you do something important with a movie that makes a difference? And how do you break through all of those people that are making movies? Millions and millions of hours, people are sitting in front of tablets, they're sitting in front of cell phones, and they're watching moving images. How do you make sure that what you're doing has, A, an audience, and how it has significance? Now, it has to have significance to you first. So the first thing I recommend is if you have a subject, something you really feel passionate about, and you really feel that you could just dedicate yourself for a big chunk of your free time to put a message out there, then you make a film about it. And it's something you have to feel so strongly about that you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot of your free time and a lot of your down pleasurable time to sacrifice to really work hard to make a great movie. And that's what we have to do. We have to get students who are getting 6 credits. But 6 credits means you're supposed to be in class for 6 hours a week. We've never made a movie with the students that said we're going to do it for 6 hours a week. Most of the students that sign up for our class end up working about 30 hours a week just on this class alone, and they have other classes. So the dedication to making a movie is beyond just like, oh, I think I'll take out my cell phone or I'll take out a camera, I'll just shoot some stuff. So my first thing, if you're going to make a film, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we did with this, really, really important to have a clear objective or objectives for your film. You got to see what the end product's going to be, and how do you want to use it? Just making a movie because you're bored, yeah, that's fine. But if you want to be successful and you want the movie to do something, you have to kind of have in your mind ahead of time, what exactly do I want to do? A, who is my audience? Why am I making this movie? I'm making it just because I have an impulse. That's great, but it's not going to sustain you. An impulse is not going to sustain you. You have to have a game plan, you have to have a timeline, and you have to have clear, spelled-out objectives. Now, in this particular film, like John said, and I'll turn it back to him in a second, just give you very concrete things about, we had a problem at Villanova. I'm the advisor to students with disabilities. We had a problem at Villanova. We're getting more students with disabilities than we ever have. In the last 15 years, the number of students with disabilities coming to college has increased. We're a private school. We get no funding from the state to help anybody with a disability. So if a student with a disability comes to our school, it's a big deal. We have to make sure, especially if students in wheelchairs or students who are visually impaired or students that have hearing impairments, they need special services that cost a lot of money. To give you an idea, all right, this particular kid you're going to see in this film, when he came here, he doesn't talk, he doesn't walk, and he can't write. Okay, he's got cerebral palsy, and he can't do anything. So when he came to school, we never had somebody that came with a nurse. He needs a 24/7 nurse with him. We had to build a room for him. We had to build a room for his nurse, and we had to build a special bathroom for him. Because in our dorms, all the bathrooms are public. So just to house this kid, his first year, cost $150,000 the first year. Now that's money we would normally make. When students come, we charge them for rooms. But here was a kid coming in that we had to spend $150,000 to house. He's only paying $50,000 in tuition. But we were spending $150,000 on him. Before he even got in the door, we spent $150,000 on him. We had to give him special services, and that all costs money, and we don't get reimbursed. So from the school's point of view, even though legally we have to take students with disabilities, the school did not embrace it. They did not want these kids to come. They wouldn't say that publicly because they're not allowed to, but privately, administrators, and I can understand it, this is going to cost us too much money. So I had 3 objectives. I went to John and I said, and this student you're going to see in the film in a second came to Villanova, and the first year he came, the other problem with disabilities is the students that are not disabled kind of ignored this guy. He was isolated. He had no social life because in order to interact with him, you have to really, really spend time. He talks with his thumb on an alphabet board. So to say hi to him and how are you, it takes about 10 minutes. Most college students are busy. They don't want to stop and take time for this kid. So socially, he had no peer group. He had no friends. He only had adults like myself that were caretakers for him. So we had a couple of problems with disabled students, 2 in particular, and I said to John, we ought to make a film showing the community how difficult it is to be disabled on this campus. So we had 3 objectives. First objective was we want the administration and the faculty to know that at Villanova University, these students are coming. And our mission is to educate everyone. We pride ourselves of being a welcoming community. So our first goal was to have the administration and the faculty become more welcoming and more hospitable and more committed to students living with a disability. That was our first objective with the film. Second objective was to get the students aware of what it's like to go to college with a severe disability and how isolating it is to have a disability. We wanted to change the social world for people with disabilities. That was the second objective of the film. So our second audience was students. First audience, administrators, faculty. Second audience, students. Third audience, and most important, were fundraising people, alumni who had money. Because we figured if the film touched a nerve in people, people would take out their checkbook and donate money to offset some of the expenses that we were facing with disabilities. So they were our objectives. That's why we made the film. We didn't make the film just to go, hey, here's a disabled guy. We made a film with a purpose in mind, 3 purposes. We wanted to change things at our campus with a film, or at least begin the conversation. And that's what we did. So I'll turn it back to John.
And so what you're going to see, I'll show you a clip from the opening of this film that'll introduce 2 students, one who was just coming into Villanova, one who had been there. And again, we wanted people to be able to look past the wheelchairs for these 2 students with cerebral palsy. It's just even my own experience in making this film. You'll see this guy, Frank Kanivi, the first guy that you'll see up here. Again, he can't walk. He can't talk. So how do you communicate with him? Well, he turned out to be, he just graduated from Villanova with about a 3.4 GPA about a week ago. His last class he took with me, and he's one of my favorite students of all time. So I was transformed by this. He's one of the funniest kids I've ever met. So we'll show you a little bit of the introduction, and we'll show you how, we're looking at, okay, here's a social problem, people not willing to look past wheelchairs. And how do you deal with that? We don't have a big budget to go into statistics and history, so we want to tell an individual story, or in this case, 2 individual story, and hope that that touches an audience in some way. So we hope that's what we did. And the unique thing was here that we felt people would listen, and they did. This film has now been shown all over the country, all over the world. United Cerebral Palsy gave the students who made this film their national award, and United Cerebral Palsy shows it all over the country. We really hope that it changed people's attitudes. And what was great that's a tie-in here is that Frank Kanivi, the one student, is a manager for the men's basketball team at Villanova University. Okay, and the other student, Nick Gaynor, is manager for the women's basketball team at Villanova University. So there was that tie-in. That's why you see the basketball and coming off the DL.
This is Frankie. He's a freshman at Villanova, so you might have seen him rolling around campus or managing the men's basketball team. Frank was born with cerebral palsy, which means that Frankie can't walk, talk, or write, but he does drool. Don't be fooled, because while he might use a simple board to communicate, he's one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. Like after basketball practice, Frankie can rattle off stats like you wouldn't believe. rebounds, shooting percentages, steals, fouls, travels, just about anything. He grew up in a little town called Seagirt. Let's put it this way. In Seagirt, Frank's pretty much a celebrity. But whether you know him or not, Frank will practically run you over just to say hello.
I think when people first see me, they think I am not on the same level as them. It is understandable. I even stereotype others. We all do.
And this is Nick. He's an incoming freshman at Villanova. He was born with cerebral palsy as well. But unlike Frankie, Nick can talk. Whether it's classes, sports, girls, prom, Nick talks about anything and everything a high school senior would. Plus, the kid's obsessed with Villanova women's basketball. He's their team manager, and in terms of knowing sports stats or dishing out advice, Nick and Frankie are a lot alike. In fact, Nick is just as much a superstar to the women's basketball team as Frank is in his hometown.
Nick Gaynor. Sensitive and loving. Nick Gaynor. Dashingly handsome. At least I like to think so.
So that's Frank and Nick. But hey, like the rest of us, these guys need an assist every now and then. That's where Greg and John come in. I don't know their exact title, but basically, they do it all.
A lot of this is you have to play it by ear. You have to understand Nick's personality.
Let's watch.
We also wanted to sort of feature in this the families of these two students to get more into who these guys really were. So here you'll see, especially one of the dads, telling a story about his experience of having a disabled child.
I did not pen this brilliantly crafted allegory. It's a story about a couple, and all their lives they wanted to go to Italy because they bought all the guidebooks, and they most certainly wanted to see the Colosseum, Michelangelo's David, the gondolas of Venice. The day came, they packed their bags, boarded the flight, and landed. And the flight attendant's announcement said, "Welcome to Holland." They said to each other, "Wait, we weren't scheduled to go to Holland, we're going to Italy." And they were told, "Holland is where you've landed, and Holland is where you must remain." And the analogy, of course, is not planning to have a disabled child and not planning to raise disabled children. But if you mourn the fact that you never went to Italy, even though it's a significant loss, and even though you're going to hear people bragging about going back and forth to Italy, you will miss the fact that Holland has windmills, Holland has tulips, Holland even has Rembrandts. It's a magnificent place to be. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything that I'd hoped for.
So that's one side of the story, but there's another side to this reality.
We'll never forget this day. We went to see a neurologist, and
player or angry at an official or angry in general, and then you talk to Nick and you're not angry anymore.
And can do almost anything.
We'll just look at a little bit of the end of the film, and again, we're trying to show how, especially their experience with the basketball teams, helped them socially on campus, but that we could still go further. And again, that goal of trying to get people to see past the wheelchair.
As long as people like us open the door for him, provide him the access.
He's got feelings, he's got emotions, he's got problems, he's got stories. That's the stuff you get after, you know? Don't just get after him because he's smiling. Oh, he must be a happy kid. That makes me feel good. No. Learn who he is, then you'll feel good. Learn who these other guys are, then you'll feel good.
Sure, he's in a wheelchair and he's got cerebral palsy, but talk to him like he's an 18-year-old kid. Don't humor him.
if people would just take that 5 or 10 seconds and give a handicapped kid a chance, if they change their attitude, the handicapped kid will probably change their life.
If that's his role in life, to maybe inspire other people to reach their full potential, it's a beautiful thing.
You know, the kid that some of us didn't want, that we didn't know how to service, that we didn't know what was going to happen, that we didn't know if it was the right fit or the appropriate setting for him, that same kid, we didn't want him to go.
Greg will tell you that I harassed him the entire second semester of Frankie's freshman year saying, this isn't going to work. What are we going to do? This is not going to work. I can't make this work. How am I going to adjust the curriculum? Blah, blah, blah. It turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had.
I put kids in Division I. I put kids into some nice schools. Some kids played in Europe. But I had a kid who can't talk, can't walk, and can't write at the University of Villanova. That's some good stuff.
Nick can't wait to graduate high school in June and become a full-fledged Wildcat in the fall, where he will continue his role as manager of the women's basketball team. As for Frank, he's basically the man. How do I know? Well, he's my guy. I'm Taylor King from the Villanova men's basketball team. And in life, no one should sit out.
You want to talk, Steve, a little bit about the impact this film had and how it met our objectives?
Yeah, just this film, like John said, it went all over the world. We didn't expect it. I did not expect it. I told you my objectives were for Villanova's campus only. That's all I wanted to do. And this film got picked up by ESPN. It got picked up by the New York Times. It went viral, and it went all over the world. And at the end of the day, we won 15 film festivals. It got national awards, international awards. Got an award down in Australia, as far away as Australia. It's still being used in schools. We've probably shown it. I've shown it personally about 500 times. I've been all over the country showing this film. So it's really made an impact. Most important impact it's made is all three objectives that we started with all got accomplished. The administration and the faculty have changed their tune. And disabled students are welcomed at Villanova. Nobody would utter anything but to the contrary. So we've succeeded in the president of the university is in love with this movie. I succeeded in showing them that this is something we should celebrate, not something that we should hide from. So that's the first good news. The university got tons of publicity, so they were very happy on how good we looked as a university. The student body has changed completely. We now have a 100-member group called LEVEL. It's a student volunteer group that helps students and provides services on campus that we used to pay for. We used to pay for one-on-ones to help. We used to pay for tutors. We used to pay for scribes. We have 100 student volunteers that come and spend. So Frankie has and Nikki, they have 7 to 8 helpers every day that help them read, do papers, type, do homework, and most importantly, they have a network of friends that they didn't have before. So this friendship. Thirdly, we have raised money with the movie. The movie has been responsible for bringing major donations to Villanova University. We now have a very large budget to help other students. We've become now one of the best schools in the area to help students with disabilities. I'm not saying that it was because of the film, but the film didn't hurt. It really didn't hurt. So all our objectives of the film were met. Goes back to when you're going to make a film, if you're thinking about your film, you really have to define, again, why you're making it and what's going to be success for you. And if success, certainly if you can make money on your film, great. But really the success for me, and I think what John and I have learned, is that film is a really, really impactful media. And success in film is having a big audience who is affected by your film. More so than people that cough up money for it. It's certainly nice to get money for doing something, but our students didn't do it for the money. And the students changed by making this film. The students in the class changed. A lot of the students that have worked on these films have changed their career paths because of being intimately involved with these subjects. So it's a real happy ending in a lot of ways. And again, how do you measure success? I don't measure success with money. I measure success with how many people got the message. How many people, and like I said, I don't think John and I think we're going to change the world with our films. But how many people can we shine a light on and get them to stop and say, hey, I never thought of the world like that before. And we've done it in this particular film. ESPN showed it for 1 month on ESPNU at halftime of all their games. They showed clips of it, and they estimate that 10 million people watched this movie over the course of February 2009. And again, and I've shown it at least 500 times. It's been shown all over the world. So we figure probably about 14, 15 million people have seen this movie over the course of its life. And that's something that was just we were just going to do a film with some students. So you don't know. I did not say, wow, I'm going to make this film that's going to go around the world. I just wanted to make a film, and with John, about something we cared about. And look what happened. So you never know. So you might be sitting on the next idea, all right, that's going to make a difference. So
and again, this is a film made by people not that much older than you are, with no money. We never really get a budget. We just get 10 or 15 students who are willing to put in the time for this. Most of the students, when they first walk into class, have never touched a camera. Most of them have never touched a camera. But they have passion, and that's what it takes. First thing that we talk about with the students is, okay, we're making a documentary. Let's get rid of some ideas that you might already have about documentaries. You know, you always hear, well, what did you think of that documentary you saw? Well, it wasn't objective. No documentary is objective. That's what you have to remember. It's not real life. It never is real life. It uses real life as its subject, but it's never real life. It couldn't be objective. And the reason is that filmmaking is this decision-based art form. Every time you take a camera and point it at someone, every time you do that, you're pointing it away from someone else. That's a decision you made. What would be an objective film? Maybe the security cameras in the hallway are kind of objective, but who the heck would want to watch that anyway? You're filmmakers. You are storytellers as a documentary filmmaker. Now, these films are a particular kind of documentary. It's not investigative journalism, which has its own place and is great. This is advocacy filmmaking. We're on their side. We have to do this because Frank and Nick, when we made this movie, we were showing them in some pretty vulnerable situations what Frank has to do to get up in the morning with his nurse. She has to help him brush his teeth, get dressed, go to the bathroom. So we really, really have to show respect, and we really have to be advocates. So that's very, very crucial that you do not exploit. But it's also important to remember, okay, we're taking this sort of situation, students with disabilities, how do you make them part of a community like Villanova or Montgomery County Community College or your high school? Well, the best way to do that, we found with all these films, is to tell the story of one or two or three people. You're storytellers. I'm sure that some of your teachers in the high school have talked to you about story structure. And really, that's what we try to stress with our students. You're storytellers. Tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Have that beginning introduce the subject, introduce the problem, and have some people in the movie say, I'm going to do this. And then in the middle of your story, right, you're going to show all the problems that can occur because of this. Lots and lots of problems, lots of difficulties to overcome. And you're even going to bring your audience to a low point. Oh, no. But then let them think about the problem in a new way. And then in the end of your film, you can kind of show them that there is a way. Right? That's stories. People call it 3-act story structure sometimes, or, Aristotle talked about it in different ways, but you really have to think of yourself as storytellers. Again, these movies that we make are anywhere from what's the shortest, 24 minutes? 27 minutes, the longest is 39, right? Somewhere in there, because we want to be available for short films. So again, I hope these things can inspire you, because these films are made with no money. This is the digital age. You can do this. It's just dedication. How much dedication do you have? Okay, I want to show this next. I just want to show a little clip from another film we made. The first film that we did was about an organization that helped men as they came out of prison, helped them get back with their communities, their families. We screened the film a number of times. At one of the screenings, a woman came up to us and said, "I want you to make a film about my organization." And we did. We wound up doing that. And we were thrilled to do it. This woman, Dorothy Johnson Spite, was just named Citizen of the Year by the Philadelphia Inquirer. That was just announced maybe 2 weeks ago, right? So I want to show you how the students, this is an organization, well, you can talk a little bit about the organization while I set this up.
Yeah, this woman, Dorothy Johnson, runs an organization called Mothers in Charge. It's up in the Northeast. Well, actually, it started in the Northeast. Dorothy Johnson and Ruth Donnelly, the two mothers that started it, both of their sons were murdered by the same guy a couple months apart. They met each other through Action News. You ever see Crime Fighters on Action News? Rick Williams. Rick Williams did a story, and these two women, one woman was watching the other woman on Crime Fighters and said, "I think the guy that killed her son killed my son." She walked over to her house, and they went through the whole grieving process of their sons and the capture of the guy that killed them and the trial. At the end of it, they were both so devastated by losing their sons, they committed themselves to starting an organization to fight gun violence. And so they started a thing called Mothers in Charge, where they support mothers who've just lost their children, and they also fight for changes in gun laws. She came to us and she said, "Would you do a film on us? We don't have any money." So we did the film. Again, took a bunch of students. Most of the students, all the students were in the class. One girl was from Denver. They didn't even know where North Philadelphia was. We took them up into North Philadelphia, and we got very involved in the issue of gun violence. And we made this film, and again, went on to do very, very well. Very, very painful movie to make, but it really did make a difference. It helped put Mothers in Charge on the map. Again, I always say, what's your purpose of the film? Well, one of our big purposes is to help a nonprofit like Dorothy make money, get grants to continue her work because they don't get paid. So she has to constantly go looking for funding sources. So the film helps her explain her work. So here's a little clip from the film.
So this clip I'm going to show you is the end of the film. It features Dorothy, but you'll see, for example, that's Dorothy all the way over here on the left. And the other two women were also women who had lost children to violence. So Dorothy started this organization. It's a peace advocacy group, and it's also a support group for women who lose children to violence. So you'll hear a bunch of the other mothers talk about Dorothy a little bit, and you'll also kind of see Dorothy, as we interview her, the difficulties she has in doing this because she still misses her son. And you'll see her with another young woman sort of coming into Mothers in Charge, and it goes on and on. So the students kind of made some interesting choices here in how they were going to show this film. It doesn't have quite the upbeat ending that you might have seen with Coming Off the DL, but I think it was a good choice the students made.
To this fight, regardless of what it may seem like on the outside, regardless of the choices, decisions my children made, I have still poured into them, never gave up on them, and never will give up on them.
When my life has ended, I can say that I've done my part in trying to decrease the violence.
I really want it to be an organization that will make a difference and advocate for peace in our community.
One year, Dorothy says to me, "I don't know, the holidays are coming. What are we going to do for the mothers?" And so she had this vision. We put it together to have a program at United Way for the mothers to make their holidays a little better.
By the grace of Mothers in Charge and Dorothy and all the mothers I've met through there, I have been able to get up in the morning and do what I need to do and go to work, and I don't think I could have done it. I really don't believe I could have ever made it this far 9 years later without the help of Mothers in Charge.
Dorothy is my friend. She's my mentor. We're not that much different in age, but I look at it sometimes as a mom figure for all.
Dorothy is a leader among women. Her courage has inspired me and many of us because she has the vision. She has the vision and she has the strength to carry it forward.
I hope to see Mothers in Charge make a real impact on the community, where they reach the masses of people and give a wake-up call. And people, as a result, get involved all across this country and on some level to make a difference with the issue of violence. And then Mothers in Charge can be out of business. We don't want to continue to see mothers come to us because they've lost their children. I want to be a strength and a support to the women that come to me, that come to the organization, and I don't want to let them down. So I think that in itself creates a challenge. I'm not the real superwoman I think I am. I'm really not, but sometimes I think that I need to be. So that oftentimes creates pressures for me. I want to support and help them in any way that I can, but there are days there are days that I miss my son so much, and that it's hard for me to be a strength because I'm so weak and missing him and hurting because of his death. So, a minute here. I think the challenge is oftentimes finding the strength that I need to go on in spite of my own pain. Finding the strength that I need to be strong for so many of the women that are coming to me that are broken in spirit, emotionally, in every way you can think of because they've had to bury their son or daughter. I miss my son every day, and it still hurts me a lot. But I feel a part of me just feels that I need to elude the strength in order to keep them going and keep them motivated.
Yeah, so this was an incredible experience, and I've actually, I don't know if you saw Ruth Donnelly, the blonde in there. She teaches in a charter school up in the Northeast. She's from the Northeast. She used to, but like I said, they both met kind of happenstance. Now, from this film, Dorothy now has taken this film around the country. We put a teacher's guide with it now, an educational guide. They used it in the Chicago schools in an anti-violence campaign. So a lot of again, we started this with a bunch of students. Next thing you know, this film is being shown. It won the San Diego Black Film Festival. It won the Texas Black Film Festival. Won a thing called Peace on Earth in Chicago. And because of the Peace on Earth Festival in Chicago, it got picked up by the Chicago School District. They used it in a curriculum program. Then our students helped develop the curriculum for the program. So all the students in the class, again, they signed up for a course to make a movie, and it really had such an impact that it's still going on today. Dorothy just contacted me last week. She wants our students to make another film. She started a program at Riverside Prison, a reentry program for women coming back, similar to what we did with the men, women coming out of jail, reuniting them with their families. It's a life skills program, and she asked me and the students to make a film for her possibly next year. So we're in negotiation. We may go back and do another film with Dorothy. So it was a real incredible experience. And like I said, I think John, I don't know if we addressed this well enough, but if you watch this whole film, and this is just something for you to keep in mind as if you're going to make a movie, something practical thing. If you notice,
give me the keys to your car.
It'll segue into this clip too. Most of the films we make are dealing with people at a real deficit in their life. In this particular case, we're dealing with homeless people. Dorothy's situation, we were dealing with people who one woman had just lost her son in August. We were shooting her in September and October. So when you're making a film, one of the things we're doing, like John said, we're telling stories about people. And we're telling about stories about people who are very vulnerable and are in a lot of pain. And then we're telling the story in service of the issue. But anybody can make a movie. But you have to have something important to say. These characters, these subjects, all have something important to say. But it's painful. It's painful for them to watch themselves on screen. So if you're going to make a film, particularly this type of filmmaking, documentaries, you really, really, really have to be sensitive and understand, communicate with the people what your intentions are. You and the subject have to be on the same page. They have to buy into what you want to do with the film, and you have to buy into their boundaries, and you have to know their boundaries. You can't just put cameras in people's faces. We have made mistakes, John and I. I think what we know today is as a result of a lot of mistakes we made. When I first started doing this, I'll just make a movie. I'll just show up with a camera. Yeah, just ask some questions. Well, most people, when they put a camera in front of them, they freeze up. And they don't want to reveal too much of their personal life. So you have to really, really go through a process with the people you're making films about for them to get to know you, and they have to trust you, and you have to respect their boundaries. You can't, and it's not, like John said, it's not investigative journalism. We're not sticking a camera into people's faces and say, hey, defend yourself. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? That's TV journalism.
But you have to remember, with this sort of gotcha reality television, that's in the back of a lot of people's minds. So you have to be aware of that. I mean, honestly, the women of Mothers in Charge, it's, again, 15 weeks, we're shooting this film, editing at the end, and Dorothy says, wait a minute, I haven't seen any of this. What are you guys doing? Thought, uh-oh,
Yeah,
let's hope she likes this. Now, it turned out she loved it when we showed it to her. But she was, I don't blame her. She had been burned before. And so, but she, thankfully, she wound up loving this. Remember, when you're making one of these films, and you can do this, you can get something that you're passionate about, get together with some other people and make one of these movies. But you have to think about access. We painted ourselves almost into a corner about a year ago when Steve was in contact with Graterford Prison. Someone was talking to him about a new program they had there, and I'll let you talk just quickly about that.
Yeah, Graterford called me and said, and a lot of times now that we're out in the market, people go, oh, a lot of nonprofits will call me and say, hey, can you make a film about us? Because we heard it's like really great and it's free, and we'll get a piece that we can use for fundraising. So everybody's really excited. So I get about 10 calls a week now, or a month, at least. I would say sometimes 10 a week, sometimes 10 a month. Can you make a film? Can your Villanova students come out and do a film about us? So Graterford Prison calls me. A guy from Graterford Prison says, we have a hospice program for people that are lifers at Graterford Prison. And we want to make a film to show this amazing work of these hospice nurses with these guys that are life in prison. So I go, great. So we go up. We get all involved. I got the class involved. We do a whole curriculum on prisons and incarceration. We start to shoot the film. Some bureaucrat in Harrisburg says, nope, can't shoot that film. Not allowed to show prisoners on camera. Because if the perception of the victims' families, and I didn't think of this, if the victims' families saw these guys that are lifers in jail getting a special service at the end of their life, they would feel betrayed and they'd have a political problem. So they thought that the public wants to see prisoners being punished. So don't make a film where the prisoners are getting some kind of benefit. And that was the problem this guy in Harrisburg had. You can argue the merits of that, but the bottom line is 4 weeks into the semester, we get shut down. We have 15 weeks to make a film. We have no subject. So luckily...
Well, then one of the students said, you know, I have Professor Senna, who's another professor at Villanova, and she started an organization called SREHUP. It's what they call it. It's Student-Run Emergency Housing of Philadelphia. She started an organization where students from 5 area universities, Villanova, Temple, Penn, Drexel, and Swarthmore, ran a shelter for homeless men. Students did it all. They ran the shelter. It's in the basement of a church in Center City, of the United Methodist Church right near City Hall. They get the food for the men, so the men can come in and have a meal. It's open cold months from October into April from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., so the men can come in, get a meal, and they can and have a place to sleep that's warm and safe. So we thought, wow, well, that sounds exciting. Maybe we can do this. And once we found out that the people involved in this organization were like, yeah, we'll give you access, we said, okay. We didn't always have the access we wanted, but I just want to show this clip here. You know, I hope this shows how you have to have respect and admiration for your subjects. So you'll see here that just the tail end of an interview. Right after this, a guy sitting on the steps who is a homeless man, and he starts to break down. And the student who was conducting the interview breaks through, comes on camera with him. So I just want you to watch this quickly. And again, this film has been shown is a film that is advocates for homeless have been showing this film all over Philadelphia.
So many times I had to stay with like different family members. Starving like was the worst, especially with me being in high school and playing football. Like I didn't know if I was gonna live to see the next day.
It's hard. Life is hard.
Can I give you a hug?
Sure.
Thank you for sharing with us. Really appreciate it.
When you make these films, be prepared. The one thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to become an advocate for these issues. Always. You're going to become an advocate for these issues because you're going to hear the stories of real people. And that's the great thing about this forum. You get people to become aware of a social problem through telling the stories of real people. Did you want to?
Yeah, we could talk for like, you know,
why don't we open it up for questions?
Bag of wins, and we talk too much. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody making a film wants to share what they're doing? Anybody have any ideas? Anybody want to partner with us? Go ahead.
That's a good question. It's a little of both. We sort of have an idea, you know, that here we got a problem of homelessness, and that maybe, and we see that there are a group of young people who are doing something about it, but we do need the stories of some of these homeless men. And so there's one man who was, and we were sort of lucky, we're thinking about this will be our beginning, this will be our middle, this will be our end. And that changes a little bit as you meet interesting people. Like that guy that you just saw who breaks down crying. I mean, we just happened to catch him one night. I thought he worked at the homeless shelter. I didn't know he was a homeless man. He had been, you know, here's a guy who had a job all his life, lost his job, then lost his apartment, and he's homeless. So that changed how we could tell the story a little bit. So you always want to think about access. You also, you know, in this kind of storytelling, the danger is you're just going to have talking heads. You know what that is, right? So you need visual evidence to support that if you have too much of the talking heads. But what was really nice when we made this film is one of the men at the shelter agreed to have us follow him around all day. This is what I do. This is where I go.
But I would say, you know, one of the things that we don't have the luxury, we only have 15 weeks. So we're taking 10 to 15 students, have no experience for the main part. We got to train them first on the equipment, got to train them in storytelling. We got to find these interesting subjects. So I would say most of the time, we sort of try to storyboard as early as we can. We also have an academic component, so we have to have readings on the subject, So we have some constraints of teaching a course. So it's not just about making the movie. We're supposed to have a social justice academic component, papers,
And there's
research.
a great little book called Race, Class, and Privilege that I would recommend to anyone to read before you do one of these films. It's about that thick. It's written in very clear language, and it's sort of helpful to orient you so that you think of yourself as someone who is privileged, and so it really becomes a privilege for you to be able to tell someone else's story. Okay?
I'm a big advocate, of knowing what I'm going to shoot. I do not like to go out. Now, some people, if I have time, yeah, I can go stand somewhere and just be a neutral observer and maybe pick up something interesting. But when we're taking out people in vans, we have a finite amount of time that we can make a film. So I'm a big one for really tight organization. It's the whole theme of this thing is organize, organize, organize. Organize your goals, organize your shoots, and organize your footage. If you're going to editing a film of this size, we shoot often over 100 hours of footage to get 27, 30 minutes. So if your clips are not organized, the Final Cut or Avid or whatever you want to use or Adobe, they all have, it's just really going in, logging your footage, and watching footage. That's the other thing. I have to say, if you're going to make a film, know your footage.
Because even though you have a general idea of the story, you will definitely be sitting there in post-production saying, didn't we have a shot of that guy somewhere and that would fit perfectly here? Where is that? If you have to hunt through 50 or 100 hours, forget it. If you have done your job and logged every time you went out properly, you can look it up. Or especially if you have a really good person who's doing that job, they'll say, that was that day, and that's when we got that
shot. John referred to it as visual evidence. We call it B-roll and B-roll. You can't have enough B-roll. You just cannot have enough B-roll. Nobody wants to listen to anybody talk. You're listening to us for an hour. You'd probably like to cut away and watch some B-roll now. But in a film, we never have enough B-roll. And we went out on this film, this homeless film, I went out in the middle of the night with 3 students, and we just scoured the cities and alleys looking for shots that we could take at a distance that we couldn't put in focus. And all through this film, there are people in the middle of the night sleeping on the streets on a cold night. And it was sort of dangerous, but it really made a difference between somebody talking about homelessness and showing homelessness. So so organization is key, goals are key. And the last thing that's really important, too, if you can, especially for you guys, if you really want to make films, is try to partner with an advocacy organization, because that's going to give you access. It's probably going to give you funding, and there's all kinds of funding sources now. So the climate for this is incredibly good if you're just coming into it and you want to do it. And I will tell you, it's easier for somebody like you to walk in and get funding than it is for me. People love to encourage young people to get involved in this. Like I said, we're sort of on the back nine. You guys are coming into it. People want to, and I think the fact is that, you guys have access. You have access to equipment. You have access to technology that we didn't have. 25 years ago, it was really expensive to do this. Only a few people could do films. You had to have a lot of cash, and you had to have a lot of backing. Today, actually, you can make one with one of these if you have to. But, GoPros, have you ever used GoPros? They're, amazing. They're tremendous. And, they're like, what, $200 now for a GoPro? People have done whole films.
Go out, get passionate about something, do some research, and make a movie. Thanks.
Any other questions?
It's time's up. We got to let him go.
All right,
Okay.
get out of here.
Thanks.
See you. Thanks
See
for
ya.
coming. Give us good evaluation so we get invited back.